Let's give her a round of applause.
Okay, I think the video or the microphone's on. Well, thank you everyone for sticking through to the last presentation of the day. I'm delighted to be here. I've heard wonderful things about you and the programs that you're in and the social justice work that you're doing and interested in pursuing as researchers, and so I'm very happy to be here. And I hope that I will keep you interested and maybe even a little bit entertained. We have a few activities planned for this afternoon. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about myself as I go through this. We don't have very much time, and I don't want to spend a lot of time in self-introduction. But I will just say that I have been doing ethnographic research now for about 30 years. I started out working in a Native American Navajo community in northern Arizona, and was invited to work on their bilingual curriculum development project there. And it has become a life path for me. And I'd be happy to answer questions about how it is that I, as a white woman of Irish American heritage, got involved in doing that, because I think that reflexivity and positionality in our research is very important. Let me go through the presentation, a little overview of the presentation here. So I want to situate, today we're talking about observations and taking field notes. That's a staple of qualitative research. But I want to situate that a little bit in qualitative research as a sort of paradigm, a way of what I call a way of seeing, looking, and being a researcher. And actually that comes from an ethnographer of education by the name of Harry Wolcott. So we'll also talk a little bit about observation and sampling strategies. How do we know what to observe, when, who, how much? And then we're going to do a little activity where you'll kind of take the plunge into a mini observation we'll go into a preschool classroom. We'll talk a little bit about taking field notes, the mechanics, and some tips. And then we're going to conclude with an activity that I call potatoes, potatoes. So if you're wondering about these bags up here, that's what that's all about. And I think it'll be fun. I hope it will be fun. So qualitative inquiry, a way of seeing and knowing. It's a particular way of understanding human phenomena, a way of looking. And let me just backtrack. That way of seeing and knowing comes out of the fields of anthropology, sociology, a little bit of psychology, but also philosophy. So this is a way of doing research that's been around for a long time. It's a way of looking, and by that we mean certain kinds of methods. Observation, participant and non-participant observation being two key ones, but interviewing, and you heard Dr. Anderson-Levitt talk about that, and document collection, those are sort of the big three. And I see it also as a way of being a researcher. It's a way of doing work, in my view, that has a social justice orientation to it. We want our work to make a difference in the world. So what is qualitative inquiry best suited to understand? This comes from a very famous ethnographer who's no longer with us, but his name is Clifford Geertz, and quoted in the book by Harry Wolcott, who I mentioned earlier. And he refers to the purpose of this as understanding the complex specificness of the everyday life of persons. This is the essence of qualitative work. So in your course of your session so far, I know you've had quantitative, you've had qualitative, and each paradigm is suited to understand or to ask and to try to answer certain kinds of questions. And what we're interested here in qualitative research is understanding this complex human behavior. Whatever the research problem is that we have, it might be understanding how a teacher does or doesn't use a funds of knowledge approach in teaching. It might be why certain students, I work in education, why certain students as groups are privileged in our education systems and others are not. It might be any number of kinds of questions. But with that said, The key question is what's happening here. Look around the room. This is a very complex social group and network here. Everybody's here for probably some similar reasons, but you're all here, you're all motivated to be here by virtue of very distinct histories of experience. There's a lot of complexity just in this room. And so what we're interested in as qualitative researchers is understanding that kind of human complexity. So I'm going to just show you a few slides here. And so let's take a look at what this complex specificness looks like. Sometimes it's things that we just take for granted when we get on the subway or a bus or an airplane. And I'd just like you to jot a note as I show you these slides. And what do you think is happening here? I'm going to show you 3 or 4 different scenes in a very common place. Shopping place. Shopping places, I should say. What's happening here? One of the things that we look at in this kind of research paradigm is we try to look cross-culturally, comparatively. So, for example, I'm not sure how to go backwards on this, David. Oh, I can, okay, that's terrific. It's up here. I'm sorry, David. I'm having trouble here.
Oh, no, it's fine.
Oh. I see. Okay, got it. Okay. Let's go back to this one slide here. These 2 slides. What's happening here?
She doesn't like what she saw.
Mm-hmm. How do you know?
She's making that face.
So that's what we want in qualitative research is, so what you would want to do is describe what is that face? And how do you attribute a certain meaning to that face? More evidence. What's happening here? Yes?
Nonverbals look like they're now like turning to each other, maybe like about to discuss what they just saw, or kind of like, did you see that kind of look?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we would need a lot more evidence, but the kinds of things that give us warrant for our claims are those descriptions, the facial sometimes it's facial expressions, sometimes it's proximity of people in place. Sometimes it's things that happen all around. And one of the important things in this kind of work is context. What's happening here? A party? How do you know? People are holding beer and smiling. Okay. Where are they? Yes.
A tavern?
A tavern. How do you know?
I see a sign that says Manuel's Tavern.
Ah, there you go. Okay. Sometimes the clues are very evident. Good, but there are other clues here, aren't there? Holding beer, maybe looking up at a sports screen. Mhm. What's happening here?
Social alienation,
Social alienation. How do you know?
because there's three girls in the background pointing at the young man, and he's by himself, obviously, and the self-esteem is obviously terrified because he's looking down.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that.
Okay, this is a very good point. So sometimes two people can look at the same scene and either not see something or see very different things. And one of the things that we have to think about as we do this work is, why do we choose to focus on certain things and to edit out other things from our vision? What's happening here? Anybody? Yes,
I'm guessing he just finished his Halloween party or is going there.
Could have been Halloween, and how would you know that it was Halloween?
He's wearing a mask.
He's wearing a mask, but is Halloween something that's celebrated everywhere in the world? No, so you already have tacit knowledge of the context. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I agree with him, because no one's panicking, he's wearing a mask inside a store, and no one's panicking.
Good point. People are continuing on with their shopping. They're not fazed by that face. Let's see here. Just having a little, there it is, okay. Now let's look at these different shopping scenes here. Again. What's happening there?
It's the year of autumn.
The year of autumn.
Yeah,
How do you know?
I have tacit knowledge.
Tell us what the year of autumn is.
No, I'm joking, I don't know.
What do you see though?
I see an Eastern culture.
An Eastern
Yeah,
culture?
it looks Eastern.
Anybody else? Yes.
When they, excuse me, when they call these women Honduras and they're from Peru,
Very good. And how did you guess Peru?
I don't know, I'm from Mexico and I just.
Okay. So this is all very important. We bring our own background experience to what we see, any place that we are, but also then the kinds of interpretations that we make and the ways that we choose to describe things. This is indeed a market in Peru. What's happening here?
It's just a store, like a little mall.
Store, mall.
Yeah.
And do you see anything of the signs or anything linguistically that suggests anything here?
It's maybe near Santiali.
Near Santiali?
Santiali, yeah, where they got like the cheap clothes and all that.
Okay. Is that in the United States? Is that here?
That's in LA.
Okay, sorry, I should know. This is actually in London. But you're right, it's a specific kind of neighborhood in London. Okay, so what we're trying to do in qualitative research is we're aiming to understand this incredible complexity, just those little scenes. There was so much going on. We're trying to understand the meanings that people are making of what's happening in those in these contexts. Is this, I think someone said social alienation, and then you gave some evidence for why that is social alienation. And all of this has to be understood in context, and that context is historical, it's physical, it's social, it's organizational often. Observing in a store is very different than observing that street scene that we saw, or the bar, the tavern. But we're also interested in use, and that is we're trying to use our understandings that we gain through qualitative inquiry for socially just and socially transformative purposes. Not everyone would agree with me on that. Some people say, no, there's just basic research and that's all we should be doing, not trying to apply our research to anything. I come from the field of education, and it's very important, I think, for us to be able to have rigorous research that helps make a difference in the inequities that we often find ourselves documenting, meticulously documenting. In fact, I feel like I've spent my career documenting competence in students of color, particularly Indigenous students, because there is so much, the deficit perspective is so pervasive. Have you heard these words, emic and etic? Okay, so if you kind of look at these diagrams, they basically translate as insider and outsider perspectives. Let me tell you where this comes from. There was a linguist by the name of Kenneth Pike who made an analogy between phonemics and phonetics. Phonemics is what? Sound system, basically. So I, as a native speaker of English, at this advanced stage of my English acquisition, can pretty much, pronounce English sounds without, I don't think about them. I don't think what's an ah sound versus an a sound, or an e sound versus an f sound, right? I know that tacitly as a native speaker of English. Phonetics is the study of sound systems. And so that's looking at sound systems as systems, as regulated systems within different language groups. And as a phoneticist, I may not be a very good speaker of the language that I'm looking at. I may not have that tacit knowledge, but I can see other kinds of things about those systems that speakers either just learned intuitively or don't think about. And so that analogy has been taken up as emic, phonemic, from phonemic. Emic is the insider perspective, so you see the first arrow kind of looking from the inside out, and etic being insider perspective, looking from the outside in. In practice, we're all moving back and forth between emic and etic perspectives all the time, even if we're cultural insiders. By virtue of being a researcher, we are in some ways an outsider in that situation, or we have an etic perspective in that situation. So now I want you to look at this picture. And so observation, the foundation of qualitative research. We've talked about context, we've talked about looking for tacit or taken for granted patterns, as well as those that we bring to the situation. We're looking at direct personal experience. This is all firsthand, it's not armchair length. And it's always perspectival. So look at that dog. This is us as observers. That dog, he or she, or they, can see some things, right? But if you were to look down at that fence a few feet further down, it would be very hard for that dog to see that. It's hard for that dog to see up above, and probably to see very much down below. And this is how it is for us always as observers. We're able to see some things because of the position that we come to the work with. And there may be things that that are right in front of us that we don't see because of our positionality, our subject position, and by that I mean gender, social class, race, ethnicity, all kinds of things go into our subject position at any given time. So it's always perspectival, and we need to be aware of that and constantly challenge our observations and our descriptions. I'm just going to go quickly through these slides, and then I'm going to go into our first activity. But one of the first things that we have to decide is qualitative research, like quantitative research, uses sampling strategies. So who do we observe out of the whole universe of possibilities? Who and what do we decide to observe? Who are our participants? How many participants do we need or do we want? What exactly do we want to focus on and why? And that all goes back to our research questions. And that is, we don't just go into this saying, oh, I'm just going to observe this classroom because I'm interested in how kids learn. But we have a research question, and that sort of dictates is too strong a word, but that shapes how we pick our pool of participants, of sites, and of what to observe. Qualitative research does not use typically, in fact I don't know of any studies that use random sampling. We use what's called non-probability sampling. That is, there may be more of a certain kind of activity or a certain category of participant or person than others, and that again has to do with our research questions. We call that purposive sampling. So if I'm doing a study of education administrators, let's say I'll just pick a study that one of my students is doing, wants to understand how women of color become education leaders. And what kinds of experiences lead to that, and what kinds of challenges do they face, and what do they do to negotiate leadership positions in the field of education. So who might my sample include? Women of color who aspire to or are in leadership positions, right? So I might want to interview or observe other people too, and there could be good reasons for that. But that's purposive sampling. Sometimes we want to get what we call cross-sectional or diversity or maximum variation sampling. That is, I might not want all women who are just out of graduate school. I might want an age, a cross-section of age, right, in my sample of who I'm going to observe and who I might interview and who will be in my study. I might want women of different, quote, racial ethnic backgrounds, different ages, as I said, different social class backgrounds, different sets of experiences, perhaps from different countries, different parts of the world. Opportunistic sampling refers to sometimes we haven't thought of this category of person or activity to observe. And in the course of our field work, the opportunity presents itself and we realize it's very relevant to our research and our research questions. And so we take advantage of that opportunity. Convenience sampling refers to, so I work with one of the key education leaders in the field. And this person is nearby and they fit the other criteria. And so that's a kind of convenience sample. So these are all considerations that we take into account. Okay. So another consideration is, and now we'll go into our activity and you'll see this yourself. What lens do we look through? So you have two pictures here, really, right, of the same place. One is a close-up lens. One is a more zoom-out lens, right? Can you see that? Store. The woman in blue is kind of focused in on in the left-hand slide. We see more of the context behind her in the second slide. So that's another decision that we need to make about, are we going to use a wide-angle lens or a close-up lens? taking good field notes, the staple of qualitative research. These potatoes are not there just for nothing. We're going to have an activity with them pretty soon, but just as potatoes are a staple in our diets, and in many people's diets, good field notes are a staple in the qualitative researcher's toolkit. So we're going to do what qualitative researchers often do, which is we just enter a situation, a scene, an activity while it's in progress. Virtually every human activity is always in progress. And I want you to take some notes and just to ask ourselves that question I said was the key question: what is happening in this classroom? And then we'll think about what would you want to know to better understand what's happening, and why is it important to know that? And how would you go about finding out? I think we'll just look at maybe about 6 or 7 minutes of this little video clip, and I'll just give you a cue. This is a clue. This is a preschool classroom that we're going into. And I'm going to take notes too.
Start read the street signs, right? Very good. Dominique, what else can you be? A princess? Definitely. Sleeping Beauty and all our princess friends need to read the letters from the king, and they need to be able to read books and be well educated. What's your question? Yes, you could also be a princess, but you have to know how to read. And let's get one more. Nayeli. What? A doctor. Definitely. Do you think a doctor needs to know how to read? Yes.
Okay, so a lot of complexity there, right? Yeah. I'm going to turn to the whiteboard here, and I just want to just call out some of the things that you observed. I'm not sure what we need to do for the microphone, but so I can write them down. Thank you. Okay. This is going to be a test of my smartness. Speaking of being smart, if I can hold the microphone and write. Okay, just a few. Just write a few things. Just call out. Yes.
I saw a lot of call-out response visuals where they had specific actions or behaviors that she taught them before that they had to repeat over time, especially when she was trying to get them to refocus.
Okay.
So think about I'm going to participate, that whole ritual, where it was she said, yeah.
Okay. Participate. Okay. Good. Thank you. What else did you observe? Yes.
There was also a lot of conformity. Like at one point, one girl didn't put her finger on her nose, and she was seeking approval from her peers and her teacher, and so one of her peers told her to put her finger on her nose, even though she really didn't want to, but she did it anyways.
Okay. Good. Good. What else? Up here and then in the middle. Mm-hmm.
Why is there so much insistence from the instructor to follow this learning time she talks about?
Okay. Insistence to follow learning time. Okay, good. I think we had one in the middle, and then we'll come back over here. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I noticed that she was kind of emphasizing expectations of society. So when the girl says she wants to become a princess, she says, well, you have to read too.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the other one says the doctor, she kind of she sounds a little bit more interested in that student.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
There also already seems to be an established hierarchy of children, which I thought was sort of weird.
I saw that too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that every teacher does, but the fact that there was a child that she had come up and also instruct other children what to do, I thought was strange.
Okay. So, a child instructing others. Okay. Okay, just a couple more here. Back in the back. Then.
I thought she was kind of contradictory when she allowed the students to go get a water bottle, and then when the student was finishing, she said, "Put it away, it's learning time."
So contradictory water bottle policy.
And when she had the student get up and be next to her, she was kind of uncomfortable with his movement so much. She was constantly trying to stay still.
Mm-hmm.
She wasn't allowing him just to be himself.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then one more here. Yes.
Really just stood out to me was more of a nonverbal and verbal, was how she used her tone of voice to keep the students engaged and also control them. The pitch, so I'm sure she maybe doesn't talk like that into her normal adult friends, but just the way she was using her voice to control the room, to control the children, and
control. Good. Okay, so how many kids were in the room? 20? Did you count? Did anybody count? I think there's 17 or 18 if I remember. It was a little hard for me to see, but I've seen this video clip. What about the room, the physical?
It seemed like a small space, like for a classroom, and all the kids were kind of, I'm sure they were in one part of the classroom, but it seemed like small because of where they were sitting.
Okay, small space. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like secondary decorations on the walls.
Mm-hmm. Displays.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go through these now, and this is what one of the things that we try to do and be very cognizant of in taking field notes. So I want you to think about which of these things that I wrote on the board. I hope you can see them. I'll kind of read them too. Are what would you call a description, and what is an inference? So call out response ritual. Is that descriptive or is that inferential? If I were not an educator, would I know what a call-out response ritual is? So that requires some prior knowledge, right, to understand what a call-out ritual is. So it's descriptive, but requires. It's also specific to a certain discipline. I am going to participate in quotes. Is that descriptive? Yes. Okay. Conformity. Is that descriptive or inferential? Inferential. Now underneath that, girl didn't put finger on nose, and then there was a little bit more about that. Is that descriptive or inferential? That's descriptive. So this is the descriptive evidence for us, one piece of evidence for us to make this inference from what we see, right? This is the data, this is the evidence. Insistence to follow learning time. Descriptive or inferential? It's inferential, but we do have lots of evidence for that she kept repeating about we're wasting learning time, right? So that would be our descriptive evidence. Expectations of society. Inferential. But I think the person who gave that, you gave some descriptive evidence for that. So that's what we want. Established hierarchy. Inferential or descriptive? And below that we have child instructing others. Is that descriptive? So this is our evidence for this inference. Contradictory water bottle policy. I just wrote, descriptive or inferential? It's inferential, but we had then evidence was given, descriptive evidence was given for she did this with one child and then she told them this, right? Child's movement, and that the young child in the front that she seemed uncomfortable with. Descriptive or inferential? It's inferential, and so what we would want to have then is what exactly was going on there with that child that was moving around in the front. Why did she call him up to the front? So these are things that we would want to learn more about. Tone of voice to engage in control, descriptive or inferential? It's inferential, but there's evidence for that, right? And so we would want to, 45 minutes, okay. We would want to have more of that shows she used this tone of voice in this context, etc. I might need your help with this, David. I don't want to break it. Okay, great. So you did a great job. Yes.
So when we're taking field notes, they recommend for
Well, what I would say is, so let's go on to this next slide. What I try to do is oops. My phone. Get it back. Let me just answer that question. What I try to do is be as descriptive as possible using low inference vocabulary, but those inferences or those hunches or those insights, we call them analytic insights, you can bracket off as observer comments, and that's typically what we do in our field notes. So let me just go through a few things here, and then we're going to go into our last activity. So taking field notes, what should you record? Well, context. We kind of came to that a little later. We'd want to have sort of wide lens to try to get that picture of the place. The only way that another reader will know what happened in that setting is through your words. And maybe you might use photographs. But so we need that kind of broad angle to give us that. The verbatim speech, I'm going to participate. That's verbatim speech. We want to try to record that as much as possible, as much as we can. That's our evidence. Body language and nonverbal cues, the mention of tone of voice. These kinds of things are important to also capture and describe. And then you might want to also use a visual map. I do this all the time. Just draw a map of the place. So taking, if it's appropriate and you have permission to take photographs, that's great too. So use low inference vocabulary and then bracket off back to the question, observer comments or analytical kind of conceptual notes. And then the key is, because we're not always able to go in with a laptop or a recorder, but we want to word process our notes as soon as possible. I keep a little field journal and I just jot notes as I'm doing my field work, kind of like a running record. And yes, I see the hand. And then as soon as I can get into a situation where I can put that on, put that into my laptop or whatever and write it up, I write up an expanded set of field notes. Yes?
What is an example of low inference vocabulary?
Well, so let's see. We have a verbatim quote here. That's an example of a low inference vocabulary. Some description of how many kids were in the room, the basics of the basic mechanics, that kind of thing. Describing the room, describing what the teacher did, describing the routine without necessarily affixing an interpretation to it. It's not that that's not appropriate to do, but that you kind of want to keep that in mind, that you're making an interpretation based on your own, where you're coming from into that situation. These are just different kinds of field notes, and we don't have time to go into all of this, but jottings, this is kind of what you did when you're just in the scene at the moment and you're taking notes, maybe writing down mnemonic cues that you can develop and elaborate later when you're writing this up. A running record, similar kinds of things, descriptive, selective, varying angles, getting the wide angle lens on that classroom, and then zooming in on particular things like the child who was standing in the front, kind of moving around quite a bit. We might also choose to just focus on a particular event or activity. So let's say you've been in this classroom 5 or 6 or 10 times, and now I'm just going to look at the reading routine. Or I'm going to just only look at the morning routine, which I think this was what this was. A commentary is our elaborated reflection on what's happening. So what do I think was happening there? Engagement and control, hierarchy, established hierarchy among the children, the kinds of expectations the teacher had that seemed to be socially sanctioned, those kinds of things. And then an elaborated field report would be the larger kind of descriptive report that we would write up, where I could hand this to you and you could actually see yourself or see that classroom or see that activity. You could make sense of that from an elaborated report. We need the mechanics, date, time, place, and participants. Did anybody have a guess on when this took place? February, yes, and you have evidence for that, right? The purpose of why we were there. So we just walked into this place, but you would have an established purpose relative to your research question. The frame of reference, that refers to, am I looking at the wide angle, the more focused lens, that kind of thing. And then having a complete concrete description of the setting, the participants, the artifacts. We talked about the things on the bulletin board, the nonverbal interactions, the little boy jumping around or moving around in the front, and exactly what happened. We didn't go through that in our discussion mostly because of time. And then check for accuracy. So if we have questions about this, like was it 18 students, 20 students, we need to go back and check. And then include your observer reactions, questions, comments, but include them as such. So we're making that explicit. So these are the necessary elements of good field notes. And if you look at this picture, poor field notes so for example, where we do things like she said this, or he said that, or that kind of thing, versus I'm going to participate. That is a sharp, clear statement that we can do something with that's actually data. She said this is paraphrasing and is, sometimes that's the best we can do, but it's not as reliable piece of data. So I see that we're coming to about 22 after, and I'd like to wrap up with an activity here. And we'll have time for questions afterward, but I want to make sure you have time for this activity. And I call this potatoes, potatoes. So there's 6 bags up here. We're going to number off in just a minute, 1 through 6. There'll be 6 groups. And so whatever your number is, come and pick. These are 6 bags of potatoes. Now, let me just say, you must trust me. I am the presenter and the instructor here, and I have permission from Dr. Rios Aguilar and from David and other people on authority here. And everything in those bags is a potato. So trust me on that. So you're going to get your potato and take it either to where you're sitting or to a quiet place, and for 5 minutes you will write a description of that potato. Your description should be about a paragraph long, and you don't need to use a laptop or anything for this. And then when you're done, and we'll call time, you will come back and put your potato in the bag that you took it out of. Now, so it is important for you to remember the number, your number. So let me just give you a little kind of description of a potato. And let me take one here. Well, this one isn't actually very good for this description, but here we go. My potato fits perfectly in the palm of my left hand, and it has an outward projection that fits perfectly in the back of the palm, my palm near my thumb. The potato is slightly brownish yellow in color, and it has 3 spots where the peeling has come off and the bare brown portion of the potato is left exposed. If I have the projected point facing my right, there is another peeled spot on the lower left, and on the top right of the bare spot is a slash. So, your potato, everybody's potato will look a little differently, but take some time, really focus on this potato. Don't let anybody else, actually, if you can help it, see your potato or what you're writing about your potato. So keep your notes on your description to yourself. And let's see here. Sorry, David, this is a little just, I've got it, it's fine, it's tricky. So after you've completed your description, come back and place your potato in your group's bag. And the next part is to come. So let's number off now, 1 through 6. Oh, you're not in the, are you doing it? No, good, okay. Are you gonna number off or, no? No, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, so Mel is 1, and then Kathleen.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
1,
3,
4.
5,
6, 1,
2, 3,
4,
5. 6, 1, 2,
3.
4,
5,
6,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1.
Okay, great. So let's come up and get your potatoes, and then we'll give you 5 minutes for your descriptions. Okay, about 1 minute. Okay. So I think maybe the best thing to do is I'm going to put a bag with each number on it on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, on tables here. And I'm going to ask you to come up and put your potatoes in the numbered bag that you took it from. Number 1 will be here. We're doing this just a little teeny bit differently than I usually do it, just in the interest of time. So, 1s will come here, 2s there, you can move the bag around where it would be most convenient and easy for you. 3s, 4, 5, 6, and the idea is that you're going to spread, you can put your potatoes back in the bag and then spread them all out on the table, and I'll tell you then what comes next, okay? So if you just go by your bags and add your potatoes to the rest to the bag and spread them out so you can see them, we'll have the next step. You can just go ahead and empty the bags out. Add your potatoes. Mix them all up nicely. It's going to be important for you to get into a position where you can all kind of stand around your group of potatoes.
I know.
If it helps to move down the row a little bit, go ahead. Does everybody have their bags of potatoes plus your own added to them and all spread out? I might want to group them kind of together so you can see them all all together. Take the ones out of the bag that was on there. So you should have all the potatoes that were in the bag plus the ones that you're adding to it all grouped together. Okay, we won't probably have time for everyone to do this, but the idea now is that one person will read his or her description of their potato, and the rest of the people in the group need to be able to find that potato, identify that potato based on your description. Okay? So get into a good position where you can see all the potatoes in your group. And I'm going to leave it to you to share or decide who wants to share. But everybody participate in identifying that person's potato.
If you don't mind. Alright, so my potatoes are large in size. Brown with different shades of black. And I raised my potatoes in some either types of potatoes. There's lemon, we got. Okay. I don't even know how to do it. Rough spot where the center. That's when that's the first one here. I used to notice that my small circles feels good lumped together. They were fingerprints. All of them.
When you identify,
Wait, you had to.
once you identify a potato, you can put that one to the side.
I mean, I choose that one.
The other.
Not anymore.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's the rough spot. It feels soft.
The shape of this.
Has a number of potatoes.
All the potatoes.
Around that.
Oh.
Light brown. Lanes.
Makes me thought of like fingerprints and stuff. And I
Several.
Small cuts.
It has like a triangle next to it.
Oh, I'm really bad at observation. Like, it's so stressful.
Okay, my potato doesn't fit right in my form. It's longer and richly big and round at one end and getting smaller at the other end. It has reddish. That was easy.
Also, because I remember you put it down.
Oh, yeah.
I'm still trying to remember my potato, but I think I found mine.
Okay, okay.
So my potato is about half the size of a woman's size 8 shoe. Very I'm size 8 by the way. So
Oh, okay, okay.
So it's small.
Let's take out all
Oh wait, hold on,
Oh,
wait,
okay,
you
okay.
might want to learn it. But it's slightly heftier than the other potatoes. And then okay. And then it has a cleft chin on the bottom of one side, while the other side. The opposite side of the cleft chin side has 2 vertical slashes on it. It weighs about 3 ounces more than a fully packed Chipotle steak bowl, and feels like smooth sandpaper when holding it in your hand. Thank you. There are several holes in the potato, each gapped approximately 1.5 to 2 inches from each other.
You said 2 vertical.
This one? I'm trying to find it actually. It's not this one. That one's too big.
Try to read the description anyways. Maybe it will.
It's this one.
Oh, this is half? Yes.
There's the 2.
Oh.
And then this is the cleft chin. And if you guys ever pack your Chipotle like how I do, it's very similar.
Yeah, I was like, that's where the really steak bowl. So I would guess. Got it.
Carla. One of their friends. I went to
Andrew.
Okay, we'll do about 2 more minutes. Try to identify as many as you can. I'll come back.
Is this your first time? You said your name was Shante. I don't recognize your name on the, because I always see the who signs up. Wait, are you a walker or? Oh, Shanta. Oh, I thought you said Shanta. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, oh, I recognize Shanta. Yeah. I was like, oh,
So my potato is about the size, slightly larger than the size of my hand. Is a slight brownish color and has a total of 15 heads. It has the overall shape of an oval, but it goes slightly to the left at the top. The largest inverted curve on the potato, which is what makes it curve to the top, is about the size. It's about the size of my left thumb. There are 3 slashes on the thinner side of the potato that turn into the left, with the wider side facing. There's a cut that looks like the mark of a finger.
This one? Oh, that is like
Not that one.
I don't think it's really like, I don't know if it has no hand, but
Okay, we should be wrapping up. Okay. Can go return to wherever you were sitting. You may keep all of those potatoes. I hope there are people here who like these potatoes, so that David and I are not carting them all back home. But I said it was a potato. We'll discuss that potato and why it was there. You can, sure, or take them. Okay, so normally when I do this activity, we would have a lot more time. I know we're constrained on time, a little bit constrained on time. What was most helpful? How many potatoes did group 1 identify? 4. How about 2?
5. Yeah.
Good.
That was only
Okay, and 3?
4.5 to 5.
4.5 to 5. Okay. We'll have to find out what that's about. Let's see. So are you group 3? Group 4. Okay, group 4? 3. Okay. And group 5? 3. Group 6? Oh, good for you. Wow, that's great. So what was most helpful to you in identifying a potato? Yes. Obvious identifying marks like? How would those be described?
Like wounds or like indentations.
Wounds or indentations. I heard things like dirty color of brown, lighter undertones, kind of rough, a lot of circles. That might be a distinctive thing. Looks like someone sat on it. Disproportionate. I saw someone who was actually like kind of describing the potato with their hands. Firm, slightly dusty, earthy smell. Good. That you also used multiple senses besides the eyes and the hands. Yeah, good. What else helped you? Yes.
Sometimes like people would count the number of like pock marks.
Okay.
A lot.
Number of pock marks. So a very, that's a very descriptive, and then you could count.
Yeah.
Frequency, good. What else?
comparing it to something else that it resembles in shape.
comparison, such as?
I had one that was like a crescent moon or a banana.
Crescent moon or banana. Good. And those are terms, those are comparisons that many people would have. I'm not sure if everyone has had the experience of a banana, but most people have had the experience of a crescent moon, right? So thinking about describing it to somebody who's very, in a very different context from your own. Good. What else? Yes, and then we'll go over there.
The ones that didn't look like potatoes.
The ones that didn't look like potatoes. What were those?
It's an onion.
Okay. Why did I tell you those? Why were those onions in there?
So it is an onion.
It is an onion.
Oh, thank God.
Let's talk about this for a minute. So, you are coming to I'm a classroom teacher, you're coming to my classroom, and you're interested in studying, and I have a student who's doing this for a paper right now. She's interested in learning about the values that young children who are Spanish speakers and English bilingual attribute to different languages, Spanish and English. And you're coming to my classroom to observe these kids and maybe to talk to them at some point in time. And I tell you, so these are all native Spanish speaking kids. Those kids over there in that group are special needs learners.
Wait, the ones that speak Spanish or the ones that...
They're all Spanish speakers. And I tell you, this group, though, these are special needs learners because of their language, let's just say. Yes? Mm-hmm.
We have an assumption coming into it.
We have an assumption coming into it. A person in authority has already given us a category, right? A prism to look at what we're there to look at. So the onion in this case is, I told you these are all brown potatoes. These are all potatoes. And in fact, this was a very different kind of, totally different species of thing that was in there with the potatoes, right? But another way to think about this is, what if it is an onion who has grown up in a potato family? Considers itself a potato.
Now I just feel bad.
Looks different than a potato, but identifies as a potato.
No, it's an onion.
So here, in that case, we have an assumption that this is an onion, but it's an onion actually that identifies as a potato, right? So the reason that were there some other things in there? Did anybody else have any other? Yes.
Well, I think you kind of talked about this too, but it's also that sometimes in the course of research, something unexpected will show up.
Exactly.
Like, even if the person in authority hasn't told you, like, these are all potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you think you're going to be studying potatoes, sometimes onions will show up. And
Right.
you're still going to have to be adaptable to that.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the reason that the onions in this, did anybody have a sweet potato or a yam? Yes? Uh-huh. I think there was actually a sweet potato and there was a yam, different genera in different groups. The reason that they are in there to sort of, and I told you, trust me, they're all potatoes, right? But just to kind of help us see how we have to constantly challenge the assumptions that we bring, and also that kind of authoritarian categorizations that we often receive when we go into the field. Yes.
I have a question. When we're in research and we come across situations where we're expecting to see potatoes, or we come across an onion, do we continue looking at it in the lens of a potato researcher, or do we switch and have, like, do you understand?
Yeah, I do understand what you're saying, right. So we have to, let's just go back to that little film clip. So all of those children were sitting down on the floor except one. right? So that child was at least behaving differently, and the teacher was behaving differently toward that child than she did toward the rest of the children. If we want to understand what's happening in that classroom, we need to also understand that child's experience and where that child fits into that group, if we're trying to understand that group. Now, it may be that for various reasons you decide that's another research project. I'm really focusing on potatoes here, and so I have to really concentrate on that. But I set that aside and I say I'll come back to that. And very often it comes back to us, those unexpected kinds of things, and we need to be able to make sense of that as part of a whole. Very good question. There was a question over here, and I got into the onion and potato. I'm sorry, but I didn't want to neglect your question.
Oh no, I was just gonna say the size.
Or comment.
The size.
The size was really helpful. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if this helps to add to our conversation, but at the end of my notes, I had written, am I really looking at a potato?
Yes, good. I heard you say that. That was very good. So that was her, like an observer comment in her description. Is this really a potato? I was told it was. Doesn't look like one. But good question, or good comment. Yes.
I'm acknowledging maybe that sitting in the video, but I have another question. Would you ask the teacher why she had the students stand up, or would you ask the student, which the teacher frequently take you to use a different answer for the students?
Yeah, so those are things that we kind of have to feel our way into in terms of sensitivity and things like that. But yes, at some point in time, if I was doing a study of this preschool and I was trying to understand, for example, someone used the term rituals. I was trying to understand kind of preschool rituals in this setting. I would probably want to interview the teacher, or I might have a conversation with her and just say, I noticed that you asked that one little boy to stand up, and what were you were you thinking there, or what was the reason for that? Yeah, I probably would. And I might ask the little boy too at some point in time. But again, we have to have kind of a researcher sensitivity to whether that might be hurtful or harmful in any way. That's sort of the first ethical principle is do no harm. So we want to make sure that we're not going to upset the little boy, for example. Yes.
How much research background are you given, or do you think is important to know prior to observing? Because if you're observing behavior that you're already kind of looking for, how important is that, or is there a double-blind possibility for that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we didn't have a research question about the potatoes. We didn't have a research question about the preschool. So we don't go into the research sort of willy-nilly, and having a clear research question or set of research questions is very important. That doesn't mean that we want to put on blinders to things like an onion that turns up in the mix kind of thing. Unexpected happenings, people, behaviors, whatever, phenomena. So it is a little bit of both, but we go in with a focused research question or set of questions, and that's what we do when we do our observations is all geared toward helping us understand that. What was least helpful? Temperature. Yes.
I realized that maybe I got too descriptive with mine, and a large portion of my description was dedicated only to the texture. I was really looking up close. That's kind of useless. Raw potatoes kind of share that quality.
Okay, good. So that's the wide-angle lens, the focus lens. So I hope you can see, so we started out with complex specificness, right? And how challenging it is to describe something that we take for granted and is so simple and regular part of our lives as a potato, and how challenging that can be. I've actually had people lose their potatoes in this activity. They read their description and even they can't find their own potatoes. So obviously that's not what we want to have happen in our notes and field notes. I'm just gonna wrap up, but we still have a few minutes. I'm happy to answer questions and talk. And we'll conclude with the observer paradox. So you see this picture. And there's the researcher interested in studying this group of people or this social phenomenon. And the researcher is both part of that group, right? But needs to also be able to stand away and kind of distance, in this case, I believe it's himself from that group, and see the group from that etic perspective, but not losing track of the researcher's own position in the group. So trying to say that we must remove ourselves totally from what it is that we're observing, whether it's a potato or a classroom or whatever kind of complex, all of those scenes that we saw at first is really impossible. We saw that just by virtue of our own experience, our own lenses that we come at, that we are always part of what it is that we're trying to observe. Yes, you have a hand up? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like let's say I'm gonna be doing like field work with kind of like participating, right? Just like in ethnography. So why can't we just be like, oh, I'm just gonna jump into it right now and then I'll worry about getting that emic perspective later when I step away.
You mean just total participant observation?
Yeah, like why can't you just jump in and then worry about that, getting that, like giving the outsider perspective back again later?
Mm-hmm. Sure. And try to do record and even as you're participating, we do participant observation, we do non-participant observation. And the key here is something we call kind of a critical reflexivity. And critical reflexivity is being able to constantly ask ourselves, where am I in this description? Why did I choose to focus on this and not this? We had two people here, I'm not sure if it was you two, but two people who were looking at the same thing and saw something different or chose to focus on something different. And so we call that reflexivity. It's reflecting on our work, but reflexivity is more than that. It's also taking a critical lens to our own positionality and why we might have an inference or an interpretation like we had here, where that comes from, and continually challenging ourselves to provide counter evidence often, or more evidence for going beyond, for example, your focused look at your potato, for what it is that we're describing and that we're interpreting. So this is all a habit, it's a way of seeing I started out with, it's a habit of mind. I think it's also a habit of heart. And it takes constant work and a really systematic approach to this. So I'll just end with these slides. Research is a journey. It winds, it bends. In qualitative research especially, we need a high tolerance for ambiguity and complexity. And I wish you all the best as you continue on your research.